Hey everyone, and welcome to the Irenic Ref podcast. I am your host, Andrew Gross, and the word Irenic means aimed at or aiming towards peace. And my goal with this podcast is to try to create a bridge between coaches and officials by showing the humanity of each other in a more robust way, which isn't necessarily achievable in the minimal interactions a coach and official may experience during a game. With all that said, let's get to it. Today's guest has been officiating basketball for 27 years and football for 18 years. He's officiated 10 state tournaments, 2 state championship games, 6 semifinal games, multiple region championships, and SD16 contests. Has officiated 16 years at the Lakota National Invitational, the LNI, and officiated 1 championship games at that tournament. He also received his 25 years of officiating award in the 2021 to 2022 season. He has been a college basketball official since 2016 and officiating in the RMAC to NSIC and JUCO conferences, and was selected as an official for the JUCO regional tournament as well. He is one of 3 South Dakota officials to have officiated at all 6 state basketball tournaments. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Royce Wuertzer. Royce, good to see you. Good to have you on the show today.
It's great to see you again, Andrew, and I'm pretty excited about this experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, I got to say, let's talk about, even though this is more of a basketball geared podcast, we got to talk about something you told me in your first ever football game. There's a lot of things that happened behind the scenes and that got you to that point, but there's a lot of things that also happened in that game, and I just want you to start from the beginning. Tell me how you got into football officiating and the first game that you ever did.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. So it was, I'm trying to think the year again. I was getting ready for the season, and a good friend of mine, Randy Stanton, gives me a call. Been reffing basketball with him for several years, and says, "Hey, I need 2 guys in my crew. Football starts in 2 weeks, and I want you on my crew." And I explained to him, I never played football, don't understand the game. He goes, "It's just like basketball. You'll be fine. The books are on their way. I already got you registered," stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, next day, and start reading through them. I'm like, I'm 100% lost and confused with the football rules. It's not as easy as he said. And then he reminded me also that I had to pass the closed book test in 3 weeks also. So I was a little panicked with those things, but worked hard in the book, read the book over and over and over again, trying to understand things. He threw me at the back, Judge. He says, "It's really easy back there." And I'm, "Hey, what's our first game?" And he goes, "Don't worry about it. It's going to be a really good game. Nothing to worry about." So he finally, about that Wednesday before the game, goes, "Oh, by the way, we're working the Sturgis-Stevens game. And if Sturgis is 3 losses away from setting a national record. So they think this is their shot to break their 79-game losing streak. You get to be a part of that." And ESPN's going to be there. They're talking like 6,000 or 7,000 people that are going to attend. So it's going to be a big game. So I get super, super nervous for it. I'm already really nervous trying to understand football and all those things. So we get to the game. To be honest with you, I don't hardly remember anything from the game. I remember him getting after me to not throw my flag. So the atmosphere was crazy. It was loud, super close game. It came down to, if I remember correctly, a 2-point conversion to tie the game. Stevens didn't, and Sturgis ends up getting the ball back and ends up running out the clock and breaking their losing streak. Mass chaos happens. ESPN cameras come running on the field. The crowd runs onto the field. A couple other guys in the crew got knocked down, and it was an amazing experience for my first football game. So it's one I'll never forget.
Yeah, that's I don't know too many people who have had ESPN at the game that have had 6,000 people in attendance. I mean, you might get close to that in some of the state tournament for basketball games, but not for a regular season football or regular season basketball game. That just is somewhat unheard of. But just to follow up with that, have you ever had a basketball game that's been similar, not with the ESPN necessarily, but just kind of like 6,000 or just kind of craziness all around you?
The LNI tournament is that way. And if people haven't been out here, I mean, I've done games at the LNI, and it's packed. I mean, especially when we're at the old Barnett Center, people would be sitting everywhere, and you can't hear your whistle at times because it's so loud. And it's an amazing experience. And a couple of years ago when I worked the championship game, it was the same way. I don't know, there might have been a few open seats, but it was jam packed, loud. It's just that feeling you get about being a part of the game like that, but how exhausted you are from the emotions that go through the game too. So I mean, I've had several experiences. Even like last year at the AA girls championship game, it was a packed gym at the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Everybody was in there. I don't know if there wasn't an open seat, and it was loud and just a blast to be a part of. Experiences you just never forget.
Yeah. I don't really know if I've ever had something quite like that yet, but even even last year out at the AA boys, the crowds were bigger than I was anticipating, and but that facility out there is great. The monument out there. Have you worked any games out there?
In the monument.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, I've worked. We get to work quite a few games in there. Like with the LNI, we actually have three basketball courts going on in the monument. So we have the main gym, and then right next to the Barnett, the old Barnett, we still do some games in there, and then we have the ice arena also that they have a court in. So there's three games going on at every time, all the time. It's pretty interesting that you can bounce from game to game and see all these different teams, stuff like that. So every year we get to be in that atmosphere. So I think that's the fun part, and everybody around the state wants to come to be a part of that because of those things. But I haven't got to work a state tournament ever out here in the Black Hills. I've always had to travel, so I've never had the experience of actually being home to work a state tournament and just to see what that would be like. I have more friends and family around. Would be exciting, but it's always fun to travel around the state and get to work in all the different gyms. Still, I mean, the Monument is one of my favorites, but the Pentagon is just an amazing facility to work in, and I know you guys get to work in that quite a bit, and it's fun to be a part of those facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the Pentagon is one of those unique ones, and it's super fun to be in there. The fact that there's only like I want to say like what is it 3,500 that can fit in there is kind of limiting, but then it creates that awesome environment as well, and so it's really fun to be in that sort of environment. Even if it's not the 12,000, it's still a packed gym, and the atmosphere is great. And but you mentioned a little bit of family, wishing that they had been able to see you out at when you officiated. But tell me more about your family. Give me a little personal introduction. Tell me about your family. Tell me about where you grew up, what schools you went to, things like that.
Okay, yeah, we'll start with my family first. So I've been married to my wife Jessica for 23 years now. Just it's been fun. She's been a super supporter of my officiating. I was doing it before we started even, so she's been a part of it. Used to travel to games with me all the time. She struggled with having people yell at me. I know at one time she approached some people in the Corn Palace during Mitchell Huron boys game and kind of reminded them that that's my boy. Well, I was a fiance at the time, actually, was working the game and kind of quieted everybody down around the area. But no, with a good support system like my wife at home, it would make it really, really tough to be an official because we are gone a lot. But so she's a teacher at Stevens High School, and she's in special education and loves her job. And I'm very proud of what she does in the school. Then I have my daughter Haley. She is 20, and she's in nursing school right now through South Dakota State, out here in the Black Hills, in the middle of doing that. And then my son Tucker is 16, and he's a junior at Stevens. And it's been fun to watch those guys grow and see them involved with all the things that they do. But they do not want to be an official. They've been very clear with me about those things that they're not going to become an official. So they don't want to do any of those things. But so proud of everything that they do. But I grew up in Parkston from high school in 1996. And I'm lucky to have two great officials back there that kind of got me started in things, and we'll get into those guys eventually. But ended up at the University of South Dakota, where I ran cross country and track, and then I actually got started in refereeing there a little bit. We weren't allowed to play on the basketball league there, cross country coach was worried about us getting hurt, so we weren't allowed to play basketball. So they said, hey, can you guys come referee a few games? So I don't know how many times I was chased around by frat boys because they didn't like our calls, things like that. But so I got the taste of officiating back then. But after graduating from the University of South Dakota, I actually moved back to my hometown to work at the hospital, and moved back. Buck Timmons and Bob Malloy gave me a call and said, "Hey, you're gonna ref basketball." And nothing I had thought about doing or anything like that, but they're great mentors of mine. They both got me into running, coaching, and officiating. So I blame them for all my hobbies that I have, that I do. So, but it was fun to have those guys get me started, help me grow, and fall in love with officiating.
Yeah. You mentioned running. You mentioned officiating. Any other hobbies that you have?
Yeah, coaching, cross country track are big things that take up a lot of my time. But I do run. I try to run as much as I can. I don't run like I did in college, but kind of getting back and trying to get focused on be able to compete again. Now I turned 50, I want to get back on the track and do some racing there. But I don't hunt like I used to. I used to be a big hunter. Spend a lot of time with that. But with all these hobbies between officiating basketball and coaching cross country, makes it pretty tough. And now I started my own company where we're doing endurance testing on athletes. Added another layer to everything. So those things are taking up a little bit more of my time, but I always find time to get my runs in and then my officiating too.
Yeah, I feel like as an official, we don't want an empty space to like exist in our lives, right? We just want to keep going and doing things. At least I don't know. That's not really true, but it seems like it. Does it seem that way for you?
You think, well, you look at most officials, they're involved with so many things.
Yeah.
I think that's where we were in high school because all of us, I don't know of an official that's not a former athlete in high school. And I think we were so involved. It's a normal thing for us is to be involved with all kinds of different things because we were so active in high school. That was normal and different, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely, and I completely agree. And it's one of those things where, in a sense, it's like I want to give back to the sports and the people that gave me the opportunity to play those things. But then you have the side like me where it's like, oh, I'm going to prove how terrible those officials were by becoming a better official, and quickly realizing how not good of an official I was my first few years. I don't know if you felt that same way. Maybe just because you were thrown into it. And maybe we can talk about that too. Not really thrown into it, but really highly encouraged by some people. So yeah, tell me how you got started, the people that influenced you. You kind of alluded to some of them back in your hometown of
Yeah.
Parkston. But yeah, go ahead and tell us more about that.
Well, yeah, like I said, Buck Timmons and Bob Malloy, they told me, hey, this is what we're going to do. You're going to work the JV games with us. Each one of us will work a half, and then you have to sit and watch a varsity game, and you have to take notes, and you have to have questions for the ride home. So, I mean, they really got me focused on getting into the book and learning the rules and understanding what they're doing. But it was a lot of talking back and forth, like, okay, you had this play, you had to drive to the basket. It was a tough. What were you thinking? And they would take me through their thought process of what they did. So it was a great learning experience. Where so many times we're thrown in, to do fourth and fifth grade basketball or something like that. Here I had an opportunity to have good basketball with good officials, and I think that really kickstarted me to like it and really fall in love with it. If I think I went the other route, I think it would have been easy for me to give it up or really got hooked. So I think that's what we talk about a lot out here with our association, the Black Hills, is how do we get them hooked? Get them in the right situations and so that they have success early and then they can grow. So I know a lot of us step down and do freshman games. I'll even go and do some fifth and sixth grade, seventh and eighth grade basketball or whatever to work with some younger officials to help them to grow the game because it's a lot to take in. There's a lot going on, and at first, everybody seems like they're going 100 mile an hour, and you watch a game film, didn't look that fast. It doesn't look that fast, but it is, and the more time we get into it, the better we get at it. But it is hard, football I say is so hard. We got time to make a decision. There's so much that happens after that. We throw that flag or we don't throw that flag to figure out. So I mean, I love about basketball. It's you make a decision and you move on. Football, there's a little bit more time to think and go through things. And I think I make more mistakes in football just because I have too much time to think. Where basketball, it's just boom, let's move on.
Sure. Yeah. You talked about the sort of them bringing you along and hanging out and listening to them as they talked about the different plays, things like that. Is there? I know in the state of South Dakota we kind of have this mentor program that we've kind of tried to institute, and I don't know how well that's been operating. I think it's doing really well for at where it's at, the level that it's at right now. You kind of mentioned officiating with some people, whether that's fifth and sixth grade, freshman games. Is there something that you do personally to help along newer officials? I want to use that word rather than younger. Newer officials that are trying to get into this. Is it mostly just those games with the freshmen in the fifth and sixth grade, or do you do other things as well as the association, the Black Hills Association out there?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that I try to help out. I love sitting down and talking with officials. So we have a couple newer officials that are just moved back to the area, former college athletes, and we just sat down and talked for like 45 minutes about officiating, what it entails, things like that, and just reminding them it's so similar to what they did in college. Film, you got the study, you got the preparation, all these different things. It's so much fun to keep that going. So we sat and talked about that. And then, we start talking about like specific plays. Where do I stand when this happens? Things like that. And then, there's a lot of times that we do some film study out here too, where we'll get a group together like on a Zoom call and watch a few plays and walk through what we're looking for, how to stand in the right spots, and how to make those decisions when we have to. But I think it's just getting them to understanding the positioning and all those different things. But I love like taking guys up to Faith. It's one of my favorite trips. It's a 2-hour trip, one way, but taking new officials up there, and we get to talk basketball for 4 hours in the car. On the way up, just we'll talk about casebook plays and how we would handle them, or scenarios, or different things like that. And I think it's so much fun to me to sit and talk about the game, what I've learned over the years, situations that I've had, how I've handled them wrong, how I've handled them correctly, all those different things. So I think there's a lot of different ways of doing it. But the time we get up there, they're ready to officiate, and then it's one that I don't have to worry about them. The fans are great, so it's a good spot to get them to get out there in the court, make decisions, and then not have to worry about repercussions or anything like that, where they can just go call, like we always say, call balls and strikes, and I can take care of all the administrative things, and they can kind of get that feel for the game. So I think it's getting them, again, like I said, getting some success, and then they get hooked, and then they want to keep growing and getting better. It's fun. I would say 2016 or 2015, I got to take D'Amico Rodriguez to his first state tournament game. And actually, I got him started in officiating, so it was fun to be there with him through that whole process, watch the nerves. It brought back the excitement for me, too. So it's when you get all the way through those steps, from where we started to those trips to Faith, or up to Harding County, or up to Bison, and we talk about these long trips, but and now I get to see them doing that. Now he's in college also with me, so it's fun to see those things and know that you had an impact on somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about the experiences, driving 2 hours in a car. And we talked about how us on the eastern side of the state are a little luckier. We can drive 30 minutes and be home by 9:30. You guys maybe sometimes have to drive 2 hours, be home by midnight 30, and then have to get up in the morning and work. But speaking of those types of things, what are some experiences that you've had with officiating? Some fun ones. Mostly just some fun ones. How about that? Some fun experiences you've had with other officials, or just games.
There's been so many great experiences and fun things. One of my favorite stories, and I tell this all the time, and Larry Stevens is probably going to kill me for saying this, but I think it was Edgemont. Larry Stevens and I went to ref a game in Edgemont. I just moved out to the Black Hills, and we're doing 2-person. So we walk in the gym, and the AD meets us there, shakes our hand. I introduce myself, first time meeting him, and Larry goes to the AD, I'm going to need 2 hot dogs at halftime. I turn and look at Larry like, I don't eat at halftime. He goes, they're not for you. And I started laughing. And at halftime, he ate 2 hot dogs and went back on the court, and away we went. So I teased Larry about that. Then another time, he won a cake, and we ate the cake on the way home from a game. So those are fun experiences. But there's to be honest with you, is when you walk in a gym and a kid comes running up to you, say, "Hey, Royce, it's great to see you today. I was hoping that I'd get you on my game." And those are experiences that really mean something. You're making an impact. They remember your name. They're excited to see you. They want to have conversations with you. You get invited to their graduations. It's kind of crazy to think that you show up and spend an hour and a half in their home gym or wherever they're at, and they become friends of yours after a while because you get to see them so often. So I think those experiences are. Um, we did some summer league this summer, and I ended up working one of those teams from the summer league for football. And they all talked to me about the rest of their summer, how school was going. Those are experiences I don't forget, and outweigh everything that happens. But I go back to one of my first state tournament game ever was Mitchell Huron boys, and nervous as all get out. I had worked that game several different times. Good friends with Gary Munson. Actually ran for his son in college, so I had known him for a while, and then had Budenhagen on the other side, and got to know him pretty well too. And super nervous, and they both were giving me grief all day long because they saw me and things like that. And both of them came up to me before the game and go, "Hey, don't worry about it." And they were great the whole time. The game went into overtime. A kid made a half court shot to send it to overtime, and Amy and I could still feel that game. The atmosphere. It was in the old Sioux Falls Arena. It was packed because everybody traveled from Mitchell and Huron. It was amazing the game, and it's one of those. I did it with Jimmy Ricketts Jr. and Dwayne Fiala, and yeah, I can remember all that stuff and just how I felt all those days, and that's an experience that sticks with you for a long time.
Yeah, it's fun to think about some of those firsts that you've had in that, whether it's the first game you did, working with, like you said, your mentors, whether it's like a Bob Malloy, which, man, it's so fun to work with him because he's so encouraging, but then he also gives pointers here and there for you. But he's also super humble in the sense of saying, man, I probably missed that call too. And it's fun seeing, those people, but also getting the advice from them, learning from them. And even like you were talking about with coaches, how, you know them, you can interact with them, you can have a good time with them, and knowing the ones that, when they say something, you got to listen, and making sure
Yeah.
that you're giving them the ear in that situation. But I just want to speak about a time I went out to Rapid City, and I think it was Rapid, and you were there. You were a clinician for this Black Hills Association. I don't know if it was the third year running camp, and I just remember you being out there, and right on the sideline, you're giving these critiques to me. You're like, "Hey, take a step down. Hey, find the next defender. Find the person that's going to hurt you." And I just want to say, like, I appreciated that because that was an experience that I continue to remember to this day. Is like, hey, who's this next defender that's going to hurt me? What position am I standing? Am I getting in open view? Which seems like it should be something simple as an official to understand, but you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I didn't even know about this. Oh, I should probably be looking at a defender instead of an offensive player. Like just different things like that. And so first off, I just wanted to, in that regard, shout out to you for giving me that criticism, but also teaching moment to then help me. And a big shout out again to the Black Hills Association out there for what they're doing to help train officials, younger officials, or even some, I wouldn't say necessarily newer, but even middle of the road guys that came out for the first time and said, wow, that was an experience that I will take back, and the things that I've learned from that. So I don't know if there's anything that needs to be responded to that, but I just wanted to thank you for that and what you did to help me along
No,
with my officiating career.
yeah, no, that was interesting. I remember you and I talking about it at the state tournament here last year,
Yeah.
and it brought back all those memories. And I think that's the big thing about this is when we talk about this in the coaching world all the time, none of the stuff that I'm teaching or using is any of my original stuff. It's stuff that I've stole from all these different people, and all the great experiences that I've had, and it's taking the good and taking the bad also, but it's figuring out how does it fit into my game,
Mm-hmm.
because we're all different. I'm not a Jeff Schroeder. I mean, but I'm not him. I can't do some of the things that he can, but I try to find the things that he does that I really like that fits my game.
Yep.
And I think that's what I was looking at you. You and I are so similar in how we move, body type, and stuff like that. That I was thinking, okay, these are some tips that I think that might help you, just
Yep.
because we're so similar. And I think that's what I try to look at is like now that's a little bit shorter. Say maybe I talk to them a little different because I got to get their perspective and try to give them tips that are going to be a little more helpful than like having to weed them out like, this doesn't work for me. But I think that's the big thing is saying that, hey, this is what I do. I don't know if this will work for you, but I'm trying to think of Dave Hall is his name. I went down to his basketball camp in Denver, and he told me that, and that stuck with me. He says, "This is how I do things." I can't say the words that he said
Yeah.
because how he talks to coaches and stuff like that. He goes, "Royce, that's not you.
Yep.
Figure out who are you and use that. But you can take what I do and now put it into your words." And I think that's what it is. It's just, can we challenge somebody to think, and are you willing to listen? I think that's what we hear from our state coordinators, from our region coordinators, from our observers, all that stuff. Are you willing to listen? You may not like what somebody's saying to you, but do you listen to them and kind of understand where they're coming from? Because again, they're trying to challenge our thinking. Not as much as telling us what to do, but challenge our thinking, challenge us. Are we in the right spot? Are we thinking the right way? Are situations correctly? So I think that's kind of how I approach things and how I look at them. So I think when I'm teaching, I try to do that the same way.
Yeah. I agree, and it's very helpful to even even if you weren't saying something, you then ask a question like, what were you looking at here? And I think that helps because then I have to, or anyone else you're helping has to say, okay, what was I looking at here, and how was that making me better, or how could I improve from that situation? And I think that's such a key thing, especially nowadays. I feel like I don't know if it's true that in the past it's been that way. I don't think it has, just based on my interview with Jeff like earlier. But I think a lot of officials help in the way is like asking questions, help people come to the realization rather than just telling them how to do something and how it should be. I think those are the times that we start losing people rather than letting them come to the realization of how they can become better. Would you agree with that?
Well, I do. I think that's when I first got in this position where people are all also coming to me asking questions where I wasn't the person, trying to get all the information now I have to start giving. I think I was too eager to tell them what they were doing wrong instead of like, hey, let's talk this through. And I've gotten better. Sometimes I don't pose the questions the right way, but I think is just trying to challenge again. Okay, take me through what you were doing on this play. Help me understand what you were doing so that we can talk about it. And like, okay, this is how I would handle it if I was in your spot, standing in your position. And I think that way, because it's if somebody comes at you right away, you close down.
Mm-hmm.
And do you hear anything that they say after that? So I think it's when we could do some questioning and things like that. But I think that all sets up in how we communicate before we even get to the court. If the communication's done right, stuff like that, now it opens things up. And how do we handle pregame? Or is it just one person up there, or is it the group that's doing it? I think all those different things lead to our success on the court. And us figuring out how a group of people that, like you and I, we see each other maybe once every few years,
Yeah.
but we got to step on the court and look like we ref together every night. Is how do we get connected? And that's what I love about the college game. We spend an hour in the locker room getting connected.
Yep.
We have that opportunity to kind of get prepared because we usually come from three different directions. We don't ride together, and we got to figure that out pretty quickly. But I think it's those things. It's are you a good listener? Or get to understand those. And I love looking at plays, especially in like the college. I bring my computer along and open up a play and say, how would you officiate this?
Mm-hmm.
And now I understand that person and expects for me or her has for me, and how we're going to handle these situations. So I mean, I think that brings us together really, really quickly. So things like that I like to do. And again, I stole that from other people, so it's none of my ideas. But we're going to some great camps. I went down to Marla Denham's camp down in Phoenix, and we had NBA officials there and Final Four, national championship officials. Just to listen to those guys talk, you just sit there. You don't talk. You just listen, and you learn so much, and you can absorb so many different things. And wrote a lot of notes and stole a lot of things that I could bring back and use, because it doesn't matter the level. What we're doing is all the same thing. It's just a few mechanics difference and a few rules differences. Everything kind of is the same. So it doesn't matter if you're doing fourth grade or you're doing the end. In the end, it's all the same.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's crazy how I don't know who I was talking to, but they said in this game a foul's a foul. I think it was Pete Entringer actually. He's like, a foul's a foul still. We're still calling the same game. Doesn't matter the level. And but yeah, the interactions we have with other officials, the interactions that we've had, have made basketball officiating really memorable for me, and just more of the interactions I have continue to make those memorable. And we talked about that camp that I went out to. We talked about another official getting a few hot dogs. Is there any other memorable interactions you've had with another official that you'd like to talk about?
I mean, key of them. That's what I love about traveling around the state. I mean, I look at Chad DeYoung. He and I have become super close friends over the years, and we live at opposite ends of the state. But, we got to work a state tournament together in Sioux Falls at the A Boys, and something we just started talking, and we just kind of clicked, and we exchanged numbers right away, and we're always kind of there for each other when we need somebody to talk with. We had a bad game or had a rough play, and we help each other kind of get refocused and remember what's important. But you can go down the laundry list of people like that. There's a Dave Dolan out here that he and I became good friends because we coached together, but then we ref so many games together. And a Mike Kirkaby, those guys become like father figures to you. To be honest with you, they're a few years older, but they always have your back when you need them. And I think that's what happens in this world of officiating. I have friends from officiating that I know if we never officiated a game together, we would never have met, never be friends, because we come from such different worlds. But because of officiating, we had this common bond. We instantly become friends. I don't know of an official that I've ever met and ever worked with that hasn't become a friend right away. And because we're in this together, it's a tough thing that we do, but for some reason it's easy to become friends with an official. And you know Randy Stanton has been a huge mentor of mine out here, and I know he talks about this. What happens when I retire? All my friends are officials. Who am I going to hang out with? What am I going to do? And we've already said we'll come pick you up. We'll take you there. Well, he's gotten involved on the basketball side since he's retired, so he's going to be observing and he's helping with our assigning out here. But we all find ways to stay connected. If we're an active observer, if we're going to the gym and just helps, different things like that, or just having phone calls or reviewing plays. Like Larry Stevens, he's been out of officiating, I want to say 12, 13 years now. Still comes and gives me pointers and still helps me to grow. So those experiences mean the world to you, to have people like that and those friendships around the state. So that's why I love to travel, pop into weird gyms and see what ADs say when they're up in Aberdeen working a basketball game. Yeah. So it kind of freaks them out a little bit.
And is that something like work brings you over here, or sometimes you're just like, hey, I would like to game at the Parkston Classic at a 10 a.m. on a Saturday early in November? Like, is that a work thing, or is that you're just enjoying that?
Experiences. I do have a goal, to be honest with you. Someday of working in every gym in South Dakota.
Okay.
I mean, I've got a big chunk of them done. I definitely have to go spend some time up in the Aberdeen area and up around Mobridge to work a bunch of areas up there. But I don't know, it's just fun to experience the different gyms, the different atmospheres. There's so many different gyms that I've been and done, but it's fun working with other guys. Because I mean, we have, I think, 90 officials in the Black Hills, but you kind of work with the same guys over and over again. It is kind of fun to see other guys, but like for me, going back to Parkston Classic, it holds a special place for me. Obviously, being from Parkston and being part of the Classic, when I tried to play basketball in high school. But Bob to me, Malloy, and I know that we're kind of coming to the end of his career, and I want to keep doing that. I know I worked his last state tournament game with him, and I purposely walked up to him before he tossed the ball and gave him a big hug and thanked him because, the impact that he's had on my life. Everything I do, to be honest with you, in my life is because of Bob. He got me started in running. I was like 10 years old and started taking me on runs and got me on the cross country team, got me out for track. Then, obviously with officiating, then got me passionate about coaching too. So it's fun to go back and work with him, and I know that he's proud of me. And we talked about it. He stayed with me here a couple of weeks ago. He was in Rapid City playing at a senior baseball tournament, and we got to spend a lot of time telling stories and thanking each other for everything that we've done for each other. So it's fun to get back to the Parks and Classic and do those things and give back to the game. And I know the coaches always appreciate seeing some different officials too, but it's about the experiences. And I think we can rush through life too often and not experience some of these fun things that we get to do.
Yeah, it's really like I mentioned earlier. Bob is just a fun guy to be around, to officiate with. His humility, his wisdom, different things like that. And there was one time where myself, him, and I'll just name drop another guy, um, Shane. My goodness, I'm forgetting his name now. Wow, Gottlob. There we go. Sorry,
Yep.
Shane
Yep.
Gottlob. We had a game of Woolsey, and Bob kind of made the same sort of thing to us. He's like, I don't know if is it gonna be my last year or not. He's right out, kind of that point where he's kind of right in, right out sort of thing. And he's like, it's a blast working with two younger, newer, coming up guys that it's just really fun to be a part of that. And it's one of those things where it kind of just humbles you because you're like, there's a guy that's been a really solid official in the state of South Dakota, has done many state tournaments as well, and he's like giving you a bunch of praise, and it's like, man, it kind of humbles you because it's like, hey, am I going to be someone similar to that when I get older? Am I going to be able to be a person where who knows how long I'll be hosting something like this, but someone else might be doing a podcast and they're like, hey, who's someone who impacted you? And am I going to be like someone on your end is going to be saying, like a Bob Malloy, it's going to be like an Andrew Gross. And I hope, I think you would feel the same way, that we hope someone is going to be saying that about us, that we helped them along, that we brought them along and really made that impact for them.
No, yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think it's what is your legacy that you leave behind? There was a movie, 7 Days in Utopia. It's about a golfer and his process that he went through things. But in the end, he was talking about, we can talk about the scores, all the state tournaments that we've done, all this championship games, but what does that say when you're gone? What's that say? And I think that's something I think about, and I hope that people say, hey, I was a great partner on the floor, a supportive partner when we officiated, and had an impact on them, and I helped them to enjoy it a little bit more, and make something that's hard to do a fun experience. And even if we have bad experiences out there, how do we work together and get through those experiences? And in the end, be happy with what we did. But just you hope that you leave a good impression behind when you're gone.
Yeah. Yep. And that's my goal. I know it's your goal, and I know many people have been that influence for both of us on this road and on this journey of officiating. But now switching it up a little bit, let's get to the other side where not necessarily your coaching, but maybe some memorable interactions with some coaches, whether that was an interesting play that happened and just some dialogue that happened between you two, or maybe it was unrelated to the court. Maybe something happened with a coach that was just a good memory that you really took to heart.
Well, I have to think about that one a little bit because there are a bunch. But I remember probably with Gary Munson was my first double A game. It was a Mitchell Huron boys game. I was filling in for somebody, and Gary's the one that called me, told me that I was going to be on the game. So it was kind of funny. He called me up and said, "Hey, what are you doing Friday night?" I said, "I'm off." He goes, "Well, you're reffing a game." And I'm like, "Okay." I figured he's going to say, "Hey, more freshman game, something like that." And he goes, "No, no, you're in the varsity game." So so he talked me through what, when to be there and all that stuff. So when I get out there in the court, he can see I'm nervous. So he pulls me over right away and has just talked with me, and just say, hey, just another game, all these different things. And, we get started, I make a call in front of him. It's not a great, he goes, hey, move on. He supported me throughout the game. And I think people always had this vision of Gary Munson being hard on officials. He was probably one of the greatest guys to work with. If he was talking to you, there was a reason for it. But I just remember that he helped me get through something that was pretty tough, and I never forget him for that. And I happened to be back there working at the Miller Classic, and he was sitting in the stand. So I sat down and talked with him for had to be almost an hour. We just talked about all the memories of games that we worked together, all those different things. And it was a week later that he had passed away then. So somebody put me in that spot to be able to talk with him and relive some of those great memories that we had from working between out here and in state tournaments, probably about 20 times, and just those experiences. But then another one would be Larry Luchin's down at Custer. Just the conversations we had off the court about life and truly what's important, things like that. He was another one of those coaches that if he was speaking to you, you probably missed the play because he didn't complain. No, he's one of those guys that would support you again out there. And hey, that was a tough call. I get it, but I definitely understand it. But one that really stands out to me, and I just came back to memory, was working a game at St. Thomas More, and got Dave Hollenbeck going against Larry Luchin's with Custer, and it all the way through. St. Thomas More had like an 80-game home winning streak going, and the game's going back and forth, and we were about 5 seconds left in the game. A Custer kid make a drive to the basket, and I call a blocking foul. And if you know much about St. Thomas More, they're famous for taking charges. They work on that over and over and over again. And Dave Hollenbeck did not like my blocking call. The Custer kid to the line for two. He's out of timeouts. It was a tied game at the point, and I go over there to report the foul, and I said, Coach Hollenbeck, give me a second. Let me report the foul, then I'll come talk to you. He yells and screams at me and tells me I lost the game for him, and goes all up and down on me. And part of me says I should tee him, but I'm like, I'm not going to do it. It doesn't have any impact. So they inbound the ball, they miss the shot, they lose. The next morning, I'm in the grocery store, and guess who I run into right away? Dave Hollenbeck. He comes walking down the aisle right at me. I'm like, God, I can't hide from him. He's already seen me. He comes up. He goes, hey, that was a great call. And he goes, I appreciate how you handled yourself. It'd been easy to tee me up. I was trying to get a tee, and in the end, it just made the situation worse. After that, it was just so much easier to work with him because I gained his respect. And and we talk about that play still to this day, and I think probably 2008 or 2009 in that time. So it's a long time ago, but it's still a play that he and I talk about when we see each other, stuff like that. But it's just how we handle those situations, and they're tough, but if we can stay calm and figure that out, they appreciate it. So that gives you credit later down the road. So I mean, I could keep telling stories like that too, but there's been a lot of those good ones out there, and everybody asks about the bad ones. There's always those bad things that happen, but there's so many things that if you step back and look, that outweigh that one fan that yells at you, or that one the coach or a player. Those things happen, and if we remember, a lot of times they're yelling at the shirt, they're not really yelling at you. That helps out a lot of times. So that's something I tell myself. I might be wrong in that they're truly yelling at me, but I always say they're yelling at the shirt.
Yeah, I tend to tell my mom that when they're yelling, I just translate that in my head that, Andrew, you're doing such a great job. Good job, Andrew. And I don't really do that, but I think it puts some people at ease, like my wife as well. And like you mentioned, I don't know how much my wife likes me being yelled at, especially when she's in the stands there. But no, it's just, yeah, it's good to be able to, like you said, realize that it's more the shirt or the call that they're yelling about versus the person they're yelling at. But speaking of fouls or calls or blocks or charges, not necessarily those, but is there a rule that you were glad was added to the officiating world since you've been a part of it?
You know, I think the thing that we talk about is when we added that warning for coaches. I think it's a great tool, and we talk about it out here a lot. But it's a tool that they gave us to tell a coach, "This is my line. You're up to it now. Please don't cross it." I love that we've done that. But I think the game is constantly evolving, and I think we're always looking at that. But I like that we are looking at things to help, like adding the shot clock. I didn't work the state championship game, but I was there. It was a Class B boys state tournament up in Aberdeen, and it was Parker playing. I can't remember who they're playing, and I can't remember which team ended up holding the ball for like the last 3 minutes of regulation. Missed the shot, they go to overtime. They get the rebound, or they get the tip on the jump for the first overtime, hold the ball the whole 4 minutes, miss the shot. In the second overtime, the other team gets the tip, scores right away. They come down, hold the ball the whole way, miss the shot, game's over. That's not basketball. I've been a part of a game where they held the ball for 5 minutes standing at the top of the court because the team had a tough game the night before and coaches were fighting, and it's not a fun experience on those. So I love that we brought the shot clock in. The game brings more action. I've liked that. It's made it a little bit more exciting to me, but overall, I think that we're making good rule changes to really make the game more exciting and help the kids. But there's always a few rules that are frustrating. Obviously the uniform stuff just drives us nuts. It's way worse in football than it is in basketball. But those things kind of, and wish we could come up with a better system. But again, that's our job. And I think that's the NCAA is hammering that home is we don't get to make those decisions. Somebody else is writing the rules, but we're there to enforce them. And we got to have the integrity to enforce the rules as written. And I think that's a hard thing to do because we do have these biases. And ooh, was that, that's a late foul? Is it going to interrupt the game? Or, did they, you got that shot clock violation, but did they have the ball or didn't they have the ball? Do we want to take away something like that? I think if we stick to those rules and just adjudicate them the way they're supposed to be, it makes our job easier, and the coaches appreciate it in the end. But yeah, I think those things with the rules.
Yeah, and I think as officials, when we officiate the rules as they are written and as they want us to do it, then the committees and people that decide these rules can be like, hey, that was actually a good one, that was not a good one. When we kind of are wishy-washy in that, then it kind of, they're like, well, that might have worked if everyone would have called it that way. And so I think it's good when officials kind of band together, when they, as the NCAA men say, they ride for the brand and they call the rules as they're written. Then we can decide, is that a good rule? Is it not? I want to go back a little bit because I think the game you're talking about, it may or may not have been, but I'll claim some of this. My hometown, or my home high school, I guess, Hanson, they did this in the Class B tournament. They got the tip in overtime. They held the ball the whole overtime, made the shot, went to the championship game, ended up winning the championship game. So I think it may have been that one, but I don't exactly remember
I
who.
think you're right, but yeah, I just remember being sitting there in the stands and going like, "Ooh, this sucks. This is not a good look."
Yeah.
And I remember, I wanted to say it was Joe Alk was up there with us, and I just remember talking with her after the games, like, we got to do something different, because it wasn't a good look, I don't think, because in the end, just how everything played out, and it was a tough one. So so it's been kind of fun to see that we switched those things, but no, it's there's a lot of good things happening in basketball.
Yeah, and again, I've said this many times as I'm interviewing coaches and officials. I think our state association does a great job of trying to do things that help not only officials but also the student athletes in our state to play better, to have a good time while they're playing, good gamesmanship for the coaches, everything like that. I think our state association does an awesome job of all that stuff. So. And I don't know if they spearhead a lot, but I think a lot of times state associations can spearhead things towards the NFHS board as a whole. And I feel like our state has a good connection with NFHS and it spearheads a lot of things. And so I don't know. Kudos to SDHSAA. I guess I got that right here on my shirt. I don't know if I'm gonna have to edit that out. We'll see what they say about that. But Yeah, I just really appreciate our entire state association and what they do for our student athletes, for our officials, and even every region coordinator as well. Like they work tirelessly. They're officials. They have jobs, but they work tirelessly to make sure everything is going as smooth as possible in our state. But along with that, you kind of touched on maybe like some dress, some decor issues that we have that you're like, it stinks. We got to enforce this stuff. We got to be the fashion police, as some people say. But is there other rules that you see and you're like, man, I'm not really sure that I like this one, and not necessarily that you're not calling. You're just like, I really don't enjoy this rule. Some officials have said like, I don't like the 5 second while dribbling count. I gotta officiate 45 feet away while the person's dribbling, and I'm not supposed to pass that off. Like, I don't really enjoy that one. I hope I didn't just take yours, but is there one that you're,
No,
or two or three or something that you're like, man, I really just kind of don't like that rule, and I wish it would be edited or modified maybe?
offhand, I'm just trying to think. There's a few things that always bug you, and I'm just trying to remember what they are. Like in the moment, you're like, "Ah, I can't believe I have to make this call right now." But it's sometimes like that hand check that you're at the other end of the court, and you're like, okay, I know I got to call this. It's in front of the coach, and I got to get it, but it has impact. But if I don't get it, everybody sees it, and then you get yelled at. Where's the consistency? I'm just trying to think. I just we changed a lot of things lately that that I've liked. I mean, and one thing I'd like to see come in is, and I don't know if our shot clock operators are ready for this, but bringing that 20-second clock on an offensive rebound
Mm-hmm.
or stuff like that to speed up the game a little bit. I've loved that in the college game. One thing that I would love to see come into the high school game is in that last minute of the game where they take a timeout, they can advance into the front court.
Okay.
That makes college basketball really exciting. And that team is down, and they're getting that, and it saves time and it's a game a little bit, but it makes them pretty exciting. I've had the opportunity to be a part of a lot of really good college games that I got to work number 4 versus 5 in JUCO, and it was a double overtime game, and those being able to advance had major impacts on the game and allowed them to go to that first overtime, the next overtime with not a lot of time. And I think it brings in a lot more excitement. But then the coaches got to decide, do I want to use my timeout? Do I not want to use it earlier in the game? So I think it brings in another layer into that. And I know right now there's a lot of coaches that are concerned about us not having a one-on-one anymore. But the college coaches kind of complained at the beginning to inside, but now they don't even talk about it. It's just part of what it is. It actually has lowered foul counts down. We've had less fouls in the NCAA. They've had less major injuries because of it, because on the rebounding action, all the major collisions that have happened. So I think in the end, the coaches will adapt and be fine with it. And I think that's a great rule change actually in resetting, because I know one team, and I won't give out their names, they're horrible in the first quarter. They foul constantly. And the coach gets so frustrated because now in the second quarter, they have 2 or 3 fouls, nothing crazy, but they're in the double bonus, really quickly, and that other team's gaining that advantage. So I know that he was excited that it resets every quarter, because for some reason they never come out of the locker room very well. But though in the next 3 quarters, it's fun to watch them. But I think that people hate change, and I think that's the big thing. We had quite a bit of change, but a lot of good change this year. So I think people will adapt, and you just learn from those things, and just get us thinking a little bit more, because the first time that you're going to step in there, you're going to go one on one, and you have to reset yourself and go, no, 2 shots. But but there's not, I think they, like I said, they got rid of most of the ones that I hated, so I mean, they kind of disappeared.
Yeah. It's I think there's been I think I don't even know what year this is, 10, maybe 11. Like there's been so many rule changes or changes in the game for the 10 years I've been in. I mean, compared to, in my opinion, like the 20 years prior. I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems like there's been a lot of modifications in the past couple of years. But I think it's going to be funny. You're going to see that first free throw. They're going to go 1-1, and then they're going to miss. They're going to get a rebound. You're like, oh wait, and you start blowing whistles. Okay, we got a second shot coming up here, and so
Well,
yeah.
We did it in summer league this summer, and parents were freaking out because there's only 5 fouls. This is the new rule, 2 shots, and they go, "What 2 shots? It should be 1-1." And I mean, the parents were losing their minds, and that's what's going to happen is we're going to have a parent down the floor just telling us that we're wrong, and you turn around and like, "Hey, rules have changed. We just got to adapt with the
Yep.
times." So it is, but well, this has become normal for us. It's we go through this all the time, but my first probably 10 years officiating, we didn't have a lot of rules changes. But I would definitely say in the last, 13, 14 years, the game is truly evolved. We're we're starting to look at other ones. If you really look at it, NBA, women's basketball, and high school basketball actually align pretty closely
Yeah.
in positioning, rules, mechanics, all those things. There's a few little, but I think that's what the NFHS is doing is they're looking at these other places that are spending millions of dollars to understand officiating and how do we change things to make the game better, and we're using those things. So I think that's what's going to make the game even better and a better experience for the kids. Because that's in the end, it's an experience for the kids. It's not about us. It's not about the coaches. It's are we giving the kids the best? Because that's what they're going to talk about. I talk with kids all the time. I've been blessed as a coach to win some titles and have a lot of really good athletes, but we never talk about those. We talk about all the funny little experiences that we have.
Hmm.
And I think that's what it is. I think that's what we have to get back as an association, like in the Black Hills, or even a state association, even is let's not forget about the kids here and make sure that we're doing everything we can to make these a great experience. And everybody has to take a step back and understand that people are going to make mistakes, coaches are going to make mistakes, players are going to make mistakes, and obviously we make mistakes. And if we're all a little more patient with those things, I think again that's going to be a great experience for the kids, and they'll have great memories of their athletic career.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. I got to ask a question to you. Say Andrew Gross walks onto the basketball court 10 years ago. You're a clinician for a newer official. What's the the advice you're giving me? What's the advice you're giving that newer official? They walk on the court today. You're a clinician. What's the advice you're giving to them?
The first place I start, to be honest with you, is know the definitions in the rule book. Because I think that's our backbone. If we know definitions, then the rest of the rule book's super easy. So I tell guys, that's the first place you guys need to start. Is that. And then obviously the mechanics book, getting in that and understanding, just the general where do I stand, things like that. But I so many times that people aren't true to themselves. And I think that's where, as an official, you can get yourself in a bad spot. You try to be somebody else that you're not. I mean, I know who I am as a person now, and I'm fully confident in myself, and I'm not afraid to show who I am. I used to be afraid to smile on the court. That's a big part of who I am. I love to smile. I love to show them why I'm out there because it is fun. And I remind kids this is supposed to be fun. So I tell people don't lose sight of that. I was on a call last night, Tarmac, with the new officials. And I think that's the big thing that I talked about when they asked me to talk for a moment was I said, don't forget who you are because that's why we hired you. It was because of who you are. You're a good person, you know how to, and be that person. So don't try to be somebody else. Like I said, I can't be a Jeff Schroeder, and Jeff Schroeder can't be me. And we both know that, but he stays true to himself, and I stay true to myself, and the coaches appreciate that, and the fans do too, and obviously the kids do. But I think those are the things, and just move on. You're gonna make don't be afraid to make mistakes. I think that's what we talked about last night with the new officials is you're gonna make mistakes. You're better off blowing your whistle and make a mistake than not blowing your whistle and making a mistake because you can learn from that stuff. It's better to have a bad call than a bad no call. Is the point that was made last night. So I think those things are important because that's how we learn. We got to make mistakes, and we definitely got to learn from those mistakes. So I think those are kind of things that I sit down and talk with the newer official, that young official about.
Awesome. Thank you, Royce, for joining me this evening. Really appreciate you taking the time and coming out this evening.
No, I appreciate you doing this, Andrew. I think it's a great thing, and it's just always fun to talk about officiating. I've enjoyed how our friendship is slowly growing, and we're getting to know each other more. So I appreciate what you do.
Yeah, awesome. I feel the same way. Thanks, Royce. This has been the Irenic Ref podcast. I'm Andrew Gross, and we'll see you all next time.